How we doing, YouTube? It's Silverback here again, and today I'm going to show a different way to Dimir Flash. This is the black blue Dimir Flash Fliers deck. Basically, it's more focused than my usual deck. We run 10 different cards total, not including the lands, so it's a lot more focused, and it's pretty fun too. It does good in this new meta, at least the early meta that's emerging post bans. The deck list is on the screen now. You can see it's not too terribly different, but again, it's more focused than my other deck. So you got the Faerie Vandals, Cunning Nightbonders, Slitherwisps, Omen of the Sea, Sea-Dasher Octopus. Those are all 4-ofs. They're holdovers from the original. We have the 3-of Brazen and the 3-of Rewind. Again, those aren't anything new. The Lofty Denial is new. That's a little bit more dependable in the early game as a counter spell than Drown in the Loch, which is what it's technically replacing. But in the late game, it becomes less useful than Drown in the Loch does. So it's a give and take. But the games seem to be going a lot faster, so I think it's worth it currently. You can also see that I added in 3 copies of Dirge Bat. That's new. If everything's going to shift to a more aggro focus, then Dirge Bat might not be a bad idea. And especially if we can get a Cunning Nightbonder down or 2, and being able to cast it for 2 black or 1 of anything in 2 black, and then mutate onto it with a Sea-Dasher for just 1 blue, or mutate it onto something else for 5 mana or 4 mana. That's a lot better rate than what it costs to cast it without the Nightbonder. So overall, that's a pretty good addition. After playing the games, I think taking out the Omen of the Sea, it's in there to help proc the Faerie Vandal and make it larger and sculpt our top decks. But it might be worth taking that out, or maybe taking the copies down to 2 or a singleton even, and putting in eliminates or some form of removal. If, again, knights are going to be a thing, mono black's going to be a thing, and if blue-white flyers are going to be a thing, then we might need some form of hard removal, and eliminate would fill that slot, I think, perfectly. So that's a change I might make in future versions of the deck. But other than that, you see the deck list, or you've seen it. Let's get into some gameplay. Alright, so this first game is unranked. It's a warm-up game. I usually like to play an unranked game or 2 before I head into ranked, just to get my mind right and see how the cards are flowing. So this hand, we have nothing but flyers, but it's not bad. We have a combat trick. We have a way to bounce a problematic permanent, and we got 2 Faerie Vandals that could get pretty big here. And the Nightbonder's not a bad draw. We don't mind playing things at a cheaper rate, and it makes Threnody SInger a lot better. So we'll go ahead and get that down here first. Paradise Druid means this could be some sort of mutate deck. Sea-Dasher is a great draw here. So ideally, I would like to get down both Faerie Vandals, mutate a Sea-Dasher onto one of them, and grow everything. That would be an awesome play here. So he has the mana here that he can play out his token and his Lovestruck Beast. So that's not a bad turn for him, but I think we can do just a little bit better. So we're going to play down the Faerie Vandal number 1, Faerie Vandal number 2, and then we're going to Sea-Dasher onto one of them, and we're actually going to leave one at home. And just get in with the 1 here. So this is exactly how we drew it up. And then Omen of the Sea is a great draw too. If I lose the other Sea-Dasher, or well, now it's a Sea-Dasher. If I lose the other Faerie Vandal, I still have a way to pump the other one, which we do lose it here with the Grasp of Darkness, and that's fine. We'll let it go. I mean, we don't have a choice, but We could have bounced the token here to prevent the Lovestruck Beast from attacking, but I'd rather just blow him out with the Threnody SInger. Leaves it with 1 power, but we can just basically blow it out here. And then our next turn we could pump Faerie Vandal again, and opponent scoops. He sees that we're just too good, too fast. So let's move on to some ranked games. Alright, so let's get into some ranked games against Killicacti. That's a great name. So we're on the play. That's a plus. With all the aggro going on, anytime you can be on the play is a great advantage. Unfortunately, we're staring down 2 turns of tap lands. We'll probably go tapped and then untapped, to be honest. Or it'll really depend on what our opponent does as he takes a mulligan here. So for a starting hand, this isn't bad again. And another Vandal isn't bad either, as we've seen previously. So our opponent plays land go, and we'll do the same. And again, he doesn't have much to do, so we're just going to Faerie Vandal. Now here, we could either grow the Vandal or play out the next one and grow them both. We already got our 4 lands for rewind, so we don't need that. But I think I'm just going to hold back and see what our opponent does. Again, I like to be reactive. Yarvo, we can live with the Yarvo. So we'll go with the Faerie Vandal plan. And actually, a Sea-Dasher is amazing here. But as much as I'd like to grow the Vandals, it might have been a good idea to keep up rewind there. Dirge Bat isn't bad, and the Fabled Passage would help us to mutate that onto a Faerie Vandal. Might be the route we'll look at going. We could have played Sea-Dasher there, but I like to hold that for a Dirge Bat if it's coming. And we have the bounce here, which is effective against the mutate creature here. So we'll play down the Fabled Passage. We'll go get us an island. So we have all the black we would ever need. And since it has reach, we'll just pass and see what opponent does. Now we can counter stuff. And we will actually counter Yarvo because the Yarvo is going to be hard for us to deal with. Their opponent takes the opportunity to destroy a Faerie Vandal, which is fine, to be honest. We don't mind that. We would have liked to have kept both of them, but if we have to lose one, we have to lose one. Because now we have a Dirge Bat to come down. We're going to mutate onto the Dirge Bat. We have a combat trick if we need it. I mean, the game's looking really, really good now. Plus, we get to grow the Vandal. Get our opponent down to 10. Would have liked something other than a land, but opponent scoop, so we win our first ranked game here. Let's see if we can't win another. Alrighty, so we're going first again, which is incredible. I mean, I don't usually go first this much, so I'm feeling pretty good. The hand's not bad. We really need a second black source to take full advantage of everything. But Faerie Vandal will obviously come down first. Probably try to hold Lofty Denial up, depending on what our opponent's doing. He's playing Karuga as a companion, so that's interesting. But yeah, we got a lot of options here. Opponent plays a tap land. There's our second black source, so we're in good shape now. Opponent plays another tap land. He's on 4 colors. So he's trying to do all the things. We're going to pay 2 life. And our goal here is to get Slitherwisp down. If it eats removal, that's fine. Narset, thought about countering that, but really we'll counter whatever he gets off a Narset. And we'll still play Slitherwisp. So here the plan, play Slitherwisp, knock out Narset with the Slitherwisp, and get in at the opponent for 1 here. Again, we could flash in Sea-Dasher on top of Faerie Vandal, but I like the idea of keeping it up for Dirge Bat. Because I really don't know. I imagine we're playing some sort of control. We got the perfect counter here. And I think we might do Sea-Dasher now. Because I don't believe he's in aggro deck. And again, I think if I paid attention to his companion, that might have informed me more of what to expect here. But we'll get in for 5, take our opponent down to 12, draw a card. Another land is really not all that great here. So we'll go ahead, shuffle up the deck. Our opponent, looking our stuff over, he sees that they're both odd. We have no choice but to let this come down. And then we will play out the Dirge Bat and continue the onslaught. That's sort of why we don't want to flood out the board if we can help it. For reasons like that. If we're drawing a bunch of cards, we want to hold back answers and hold back more threats so that we can respond in kind to what our opponent does here. And if you notice, I go for a lot of blue. I mean, we don't ever need any more than 2 black. Now here I had the option of bouncing, but there was really no reason to. So we'll hard cast Brazen. And what this is going to do is we're going to hit him down to 6. And if he doesn't have an answer for our threat here, or if we're able to counter his answer, we've effectively won the game. So we'll pay the 2 life just because, just because everything's going to cost more now. But we should have enough mana to forecast a Lofty Denial, or cast it for 4. Which, here we go. He was running a bunch of board wipes. And he's thinking now he has another turn, but he doesn't. We were kind of counting on that exact thing happening, and now we get to capitalize on it. He gives us the good game opponent, and we make it to Platinum tier off of all Dimir decks. Maybe not the same one, but let's see if we can't rank up a little bit more. Alright, so I'm going to show one more ranked game here. And then I have a little treat. It was another one of my prep games as I was making sure this deck is something I wanted to show on the channel. And I feel I got into a really good matchup that I can make some points with, and possibly explain some of my thoughts about the meta and the deck itself. But let's get through this last ranked game here, and then I have the last game that I really want to feature as the main event, if you would. So opponent plays a tap land. We're going to do the same. We don't have any more 1-mana spells since I took out the Thieves Guild Enforcer. For this particular build, I'm just trying to show the different ways you can do Dimir Flash. Again, this is my Dimir Flash Fliers version. Really focused around Faerie Vandal and Omen of the Sea. I like what it does, but I think I'm thinking an Eliminate could fill that spot, maybe even a little bit better. Especially looking at like a scenario like this, it'd be nice to eliminate the one that's doubling up the counters there. But Dimir can endure. It's a deck that can really come back and surprise opponents. What we're gonna do is we got to draw the card here. To grow the Faerie Vandal so that he'll at least keep 1 attacker at home. And then next turn we can hopefully rewind and then Threnody SInger. Or we might even consider... Well, we have all kinds of options now. God, we might want to play down Nightbonder, and then play down Omen of the Sea, and then Threnody SInger on their turn. I think even though keeping up the rewind would be safer, I think we're going to be a little bit aggressive and go this route. Now this is interesting. We don't really need any more lands. And the Nightbonder isn't that great in this matchup. At least having 2 isn't, but it is another creature we could get on the board, so let's just keep it for now. And now let's see if we can't blow our opponent out a little bit. It just depends what he does here. Conclave Mentor is great. He's going to have a 4/4 Pelt Collector. And he's actually going to play safe, which is not a good option for him here. He should have been aggressive. Because now we'll get rid of his largest Pelt Collector. And now he's sitting in a situation where he's going to lose something on an attack. And he doesn't know, but we have a handful of counters now, so he's not looking too hot. A Sea-Dasher would be great at this point, because then we could really keep adding the counters to Vandal. He's just going to pass the turn. So, you know what? Let's, why not Dirge Bat here? Maybe we should have Nightbondered first, but, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's coming to our turn anyway. We draw the Castle Vantress anyway, and we're just going to pass. We want to leave up our counters. If our opponent passes, we'll kind of sacrifice an Omen and sculpt the top of our deck. That's an interesting include in his deck, but we're not going to let that happen. No way, no how. And then we're just going to sculpt our next couple draws here. We're going to put any lands to the bottom and prioritize mutate creatures, which there's a Sea-Dasher, so we're looking extremely good at this point. We'll mutate onto the Dirge Bat, blow up the Stone Cold Steve Serpent, and get in, grow the Faerie Vandal, and that should be enough to hopefully start putting this game away. So again, showing our resilience. This is a deck that should have blown us out. Our opponent was being a little too safe, I think, in his combat steps. He should add more aggression. If I were playing the deck, I'd be a little bit more aggressive, because he lost everything anyway. So we won our 3rd ranked game. Now let's go to our feature presentation. Alright, so this last game was, again, another prep game I did before moving into ranked. And I kind of wanted to feature it because it kind of demonstrates some of my thoughts and beliefs when playing this deck against certain other decks. And with Teferi gone, we're going to have more and more of these matchups. So our opponent chose Dimir to start, and he is a Dimir deck, and he's a different kind of Dimir deck. He's more of a Dimir control deck. We don't have a great starting hand for this matchup, to be honest. We don't have a fast hand, and it will come to bite us a little bit. But when we're playing a control deck, whether it's Dimir or a Dimir Flash deck or a mono blue deck, you'll want to be patient. You want to be responding to your opponent's stuff. And the more I thought about it here, he could have a Mystical Dispute. He could be drawing one right here. We could just Slitherwisp just to get it down. But I decided to pass anyway, because our opponent's going to be doing the same thing we're going to do. He's going to be looking to respond to our actions and our moves and dwindle down our threats. So I'm thinking we could play Slitherwisp to draw out a counter here, or to see if he's playing counters, to see what he's doing. And he has a rewind, so you know, this is for all intents and purposes a mirror. that rewind was great for him, because if he would have tapped out to counter that Slitherwisp, I could easily Nightbonder here and turn off all his counters. But he shows the strength of rewind. Now you might think that's strange, throwing the Slitherwisp out there to the wolves essentially, but I want to resolve my Dirge Bat, because I was under the impression that he's going to play some massive threats, and I wanted to hold the Dirge Bat to play more so than the Slitherwisp, because I figured he would have an answer, or a counter, or some way of dealing with it. So I know this Nightbonder is going to cause problems for him. He's staring it down, and he's going to destroy it. We can't really counter that with what we have in hand, so we're just going to sculpt the top of our deck here. And really another counter in this matchup isn't bad. The Faerie Vandal is excellent. I wish I had a blue up so I could play it out there, but we'll let it be. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to run Faerie Vandal out just to get countered. I don't want to run Dirge Bat out just to get countered. If our opponent taps out here, which he all but does, and a Mystical Dispute would counter there, but, at some point you have to take a little bit of a risk. And now we have a counter spell turned on that should be pretty effective at this point in the game. The Lofty Denial will counter anything unless he pays 4, and he only has 5 mana, so he decides not to be aggressive. I wouldn't have blocked there, but he doesn't want a combat trick to come down, and that should have told me something there, that if he was that hesitant, maybe he wasn't holding a good enough answer up in his hand just there. So our opponent's ahead on lands, but we're staying ahead on card advantage in a way, as in we have more stuff to play. He passes the turn again. I'd like to try to resolve something. I'm thinking about playing out a Sea-Dasher again to eat another counter spell. But I decided to move on, and now that we have the Lofty Denial, again, my thoughts are I would really like to get another land, play out the Dirge Bat, and then Lofty Denial whatever his answer is, and that would get a couple cards out of his hand, or at least one card out of his hand. But as it is right now, we're kind of at a stalemate, and again, he's wanting to react what I do. I want to react to what he does, and here he gives me an opening. Now granted, it's on the end of my turn, so he gets to react first, but I can dodge a counter spell that way. And that's what I mean about being more patient than your opponent in these control matchups. React to what they do. Wait until they give you an opening. Now I'm fully expecting him to remove the Dirge Bat here. But again, he's running low on resources, and he doesn't seem to have an answer at this point. We're at our most vulnerable right here. But he does not have an answer, and we get the land I was looking for. So now I could Sea-Dasher onto Dirge Bat. Pump up the Faerie Vandal. If he tries to do something, we can counter with a Lofty Denial. And then another one if we need to. So let's see if we can't really dwindle our opponent's hand down here. I feel like we're at the advantage now, so he might play down maybe an Essence Scatter. Again, Mystical Dispute isn't out of question, but he actually does nothing. He obviously has something instant speed in his hand. I'm not sure what it is, but it could just be another Omen of the Sea for all I know. Which, if it is, I'm surprised he didn't play it out to try to find an answer there. But I really couldn't tell you. So again, this is what I mean by being more patient than your opponent. Here he plays the Murderous Rider, so we're going to try to counter it. He can pay the 4, but then we're going to try to make him pay another 4. And that'll effectively use up all his mana for the turn. So we play another one. Even if he counters this Lofty Denial, he's basically used up all his mana on killing one creature. He's used up 2 cards on killing a creature and all his mana. So I feel that he's used up a lot of his resources here. And we still have some pretty decent ones. Now, he could have some good resources left too. But it's safe now to mutate onto Faerie Vandal. This turns off his Heartless Axe. The counters do. The more counters we get, the harder it is for him to Heartless Act. Another Dirge Bat is great here. And the one nice thing about, as he plays a Narset, it's a great play for him. We're going to do the rewind. I think we have to, because he would just pay the 4 for the other. Frantic Inventory, so he is drawing for something else. And he bounces Brazen Bower, which is not that bad for us, because we're going to untap 4 lands and play the stuff back out anyway. And we're actually going to Dirge Bat here. So he plays another land. He has 1 card. We have 4. He knows what 2 of them are. But again, one thing that Dimir Flash has over some of these other control decks, over this one, is we can refill our hand. We have the Sea-Dashers. We have the Omen of the Sea. We have the Slitherwisps. So when we start to get low like this, it's not as bad for us as it is for them. And I'm a little, I don't know, I guess he felt like he needed to threaten to kill my Dirge Bat, but he knew I had a Sea-Dasher. Now again, he could 2-for-1 me here, but I have to clear off his board and try to play my game. And now, if any luck, he'll let us draw, but he doesn't. We're ahead on board. We can sculpt the top of our deck. We're sort of in a similar position now in this mirror match, and this is just a really fun match to kind of try to outthink, outplay, outmaneuver your opponent. You know, this is more of a chess match than other games of Magic are, and it's a lot of fun. It's great to flex your brain muscles. We're not going to let that resolve. An opponent shows now he has no answers in hand, so we're looking pretty good. We're going to be able to more than likely hit him with the Dirge Bat, grow our Vandal, draw more cards. Nightbonder's great, because if he does draw into a counter, we can basically turn it off. And another Faerie Vandal isn't bad here, so again, I've talked about in several other videos being more patient in these matchups, and I hope this demonstrates, you know, really what I'm talking about when I say that. And we're just going to go ahead and kill the Murderous Rider. I don't want him gaining any more life. We'll block with both of these. Whatever one we lose is fine, and our opponent scoops. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as I enjoyed recording it. Let's do a quick wrap up. So that's the Dimir Flash Fliers deck that I've put together. Again, it's very similar to my other ones, but it's different too. And there's more consistency with that. Again, depending on your meta, if you're playing, again, a lot of aggro, I would consider putting some amount of Eliminates main board, and taking out a few of the Omen of the Sea. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Other than that, I mean, you know, we're only playing 10 different cards, so in an ideal hand, you would draw, you know, one of everything every 10 cards or so. Not counting lands, obviously, but it's very consistent. It's a lot of fun. I did lose 2 games against Knights. Both of them were against Knights. The one, my opponent had 2 of the I think it's a Worthy Knight or whatever its name is that makes the 1/1s. He had 3 of them in his starting hand. I couldn't keep up with that, unfortunately. I might have been able to survive a little longer, but I wasted a Threnody SInger. And then I lost to another Knights deck that was a little bit closer, but I made the mistake of countering one of his Night Lords and not the Embercleave. So again, you got to really think about what you're using your counters on. The Embercleave was a lot more devastating than the 1/1 Night Lord that he was playing. But either way, you know, I like this version of the deck. I like my prior version of the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.